And welcome back. I've got Pat Wesolowski here with me for the third time. We have been talking all about the college application process and scholarships. Pat is the homeschool specialist at Bryan College in East Tennessee, and she's been giving us the inside scoop on the whole admissions thing, and especially as it relates to Bryan College, but she's got a lot of great information that's helpful for anybody applying to any college. Pat, I want to get slightly personal here for just a second before we go on to the main topic today. So is there anything you would have done differently as far as how you homeschooled your kids?
Definitely, there is. One of my blog articles talks about that, and I mentioned some regrets I have. I loved that we homeschooled co-op style using unit studies, so I would absolutely do that again. One regret is that my children were not introduced to debate until the fifth was in high school, so the first four missed that. Now, in our co-ops, our kids had to give presentations from the time they participated till they grew up. So they weren't afraid of public speaking. In fact, they excelled at that. My oldest daughter, in fact, won a statewide public speaking contest in Florida. Oh. So that we overcame, which makes so much sense because my first public speaking class was college and I was petrified. Mm-hmm. So if you introduce them to that young, they don't really grow up with that fear, but we hadn't done debate. It's amazing what they learn because they learn how to argue both sides. They learn how to follow the flow of the argument. They learn how to spot false logic and answer it, but not use it. It really creates the ability of a teenager to be able to articulate and defend their beliefs and ask questions and learn more. I required my children to go to the club for a year, learn how to do it. They didn't have to compete. They could if they wanted to. It is amazing preparation, especially once they start getting involved in I forget what they're called, where they have to know current events and everything that's going on, the impromptus with that. I mean, such good preparation. By the fifth child, we quit letting them have a steady job in high school. My husband and I worked in high school. We just thought that's what you do. And so my first four did. And then we realized, they become a slave to that boss. They miss out on family vacations. They miss out on opportunities. They're not home for dinner. They may increase what they have to spend money on, so they have to keep the job. So by the fifth child, we said, no steady jobs. You can earn money. You can have contract jobs. And they did have a lot of opportunities. We do not regret making that change because that son, he spent 6 weeks in Papua New Guinea. He was a counselor at a camp in Texas in October. When they were killing Terry Schiavo in Florida, he went to the Capitol every day. Oh, wow. He went to speech and debate conferences. Oh, he went and helped clean up in Louisiana for 2 weeks after Katrina. Oh, nice. He campaigned in 3 states in elections. He couldn't have done 1/10 of what he was able to do had he had a steady job. That's awesome. We don't regret that decision. With my youngest two, I decided by then not to even teach them to read and see what happens. And if they would grow up and be ruined for life. And they both learned to read at a pretty young age. In fact, one of them, she was giving her report at co-op. She said, make me note cards. I said, why? You can't read. She goes, everybody else has note cards. I said, it's more impressive. You've memorized yours. And she goes, I want a note card. So I said, okay. So I wrote a note card of her talk. Her sister taught her what to say, so I'd overheard them. I just wrote what I recall, and when she got up there that day, she read my note. She didn't give her memorized spiel, and I said, oh, you were reading. So, I tell parents, nobody ever asked you on a job application, how old were you when you learned to read? They just want you to be able to read. So I was laid back. I was a very laid back, relaxed homeschooler. I love Dr. Mary Hood. I love her books. I love her encouragement. And we could that way just nurture our children to be what we felt they needed to be or learn or do before they finished high school.
And how do they think about it now? How do they look back on their homeschool years? Would they say that they are going to homeschool their own children? I suppose you probably have grandchildren. Are they homeschooling your grandchildren?
Yeah, I have 17 grandchildren.
Oh my goodness. That's not just you have some grandchildren. Love it.
I even ran a co-op for one of them, a medieval co-op one year. That was fun. And I just did a podcast with my second oldest who does homeschool her 4 boys. And she had nothing negative to say about her homeschool experience, which I was quite pleased with, because there's a lot of homeschoolers who have a lot of angst and blame, and we did make mistakes, but so do traditional schools. But I have 7, because it's last week and the son got married. 7 of my 9 are married. Nice. 6 have children. Out of the 6, 5 homeschool. So 5 of them are already homeschooling. If they were to say, have a complaint or wish things had been done differently, I think for sure the older ones wish they had been better prepared for those tests. They ended up being embarrassed by that. They probably would have and could have done better had I prepared them for that better. So that is a regret. I didn't know what hoops to jump through. One of the reasons I wrote Information Please and I taught them how to find information was because when you begin homeschooling in the 80s, or 85, people like to make my kids feel bad about something they didn't know. I think it made them feel better that, my kids know something you don't know. And my kids would come home and be embarrassed. So I said, you can't know everything about everything, but you can know how to get the information, how to get the answer. Again, that was before the internet. So I taught them how to find information, and I made them memorize this statement. If somebody asked them something they didn't know, they would say, I haven't needed that information up until now, but I know how to find the answer. Would you like me to look that up and get back with you?
That's
they
great.
Would do it because nobody knows everything. So,
right.
That's something I'm glad I did. That gave them confidence, and then they didn't have to feel badly when my daughter came home in tears because she didn't know there were 12 inches in a foot.
Oh, yeah.
But there are things that we probably left out because we were, relaxed. But my kids are all successful. They won't all be college graduates. One's running an engineering firm. He's not an engineer. Most of entrepreneurs, one runs a construction company. One runs a junk removal company. My youngest daughter is a nurse. She's actually lives in Uganda.
Oh, wow.
The other daughters are married and homeschooling their children.
They're all responsible adults. So we're not failing our children by homeschooling them. But as someone who sees homeschool kids come to college, what is your advice for preparing our kids for that experience?
That's a great question. We had a homeschool visitation one year. I had 10 current Bryan students who were all homeschooled on a panel. And a parent said, what were you least prepared for and what do you suggest? All 10 of them said scheduling and time management.
Oh, interesting.
Because so many of us are laid back, we didn't stick to real heavy schedules and timing. And when the parents said, what do you suggest? All of them said, either be involved with a structured co-op where you're answering to someone other than mom or dual enroll. Dual enrolling is great. If they're prepared for that and they can pass those classes, that's another mistake some homeschoolers make. They take the classes, they don't pass, that's permanent record. Don't go there. But if they can do that, then that's going to help prepare them for the scheduling and the time management.
Hey, I just wanted to break in here for just a minute to say that we have a unique dual sponsorship going on for this episode. This episode is sponsored by both Bryan College and PemLife, who have created a personal finance curriculum called Personal Finance Illustrated. And I want to let you know about it because it's kind of new on the personal finance curriculum scene, but I think it's going to make a big splash as an alternative to the ones that we've seen over and over and over again. With Personal Finance Illustrated, what you are given is a unique model, a different way of looking at personal finances, different than you've seen anywhere else. It's not a one size fits all, but it gives you a picture that is kind of groundbreaking, if you will, and gives you a lot more confidence and wisdom about making personal finance decisions. And wouldn't this be great for your teen, right? The neat thing about this is that Bryan College actually offers this course as a dual enrollment course, or you can purchase it on your own. There's a homeschool edition that your teen can work through during their homeschool day. You might learn a thing or two too, which would be awesome, right? So I advise you to check it out. The guy who created the curriculum worked as a trainer for financial planners for 26 years. And he also worked as a high school teacher. So, with those two things, he has created this curriculum, brought his expertise to this curriculum. You can choose from two options. They've got a standard secular option. They also have a biblically based Christian option. And I don't think I've seen that choice in any personal finance curriculum before. So I think it is definitely worth checking out. I will put a link in the show notes. Now let's get back to Pat.
People ask about homeschoolers and socialization. Most homeschoolers don't have that problem.
Right.
They're involved in so many things and going so many places that, on our campus, most of them stand out as being social and the leaders. There are some who we had one young man here, orientation, who had never been away from home. I mean, this was going to be brand new, and he had some concerns. We do have some coaches for the freshman students, which is really good, helps them. So there's some acclimation that takes place, especially if they're going to live on campus.
Mm-hmm. How do you suggest we support our student after they are now at college? I used to be so bad because I did not send, I still don't. I don't send care packages. It's not my gift. So don't say that, please. Unless you honestly, I probably need to be addressed about it. But anyway, what are some ways that you think are going to help our kids? Because I also used to know too that I didn't want to step on their toes or be that overprotective mom. This was their chance to learn how to stand on their own 2 feet. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's funny. I have a few thoughts, because usually the parents who are calling the most and asking the most questions in admissions are usually the homeschool parents. And I will hear around campus people saying, you should have taught your kid to be able to do that by now. They should be able to pick up the phone, ask the questions, make the calls. But then I admitted I filled out my kid's FAFSA. So
right.
I did that. They are going to be independent. You probably do need to back off as much as you can. My youngest son was told, you got to live on campus, and he could for free because I work here, and he had the state grant. And so he did the first semester, but all he cared about was a 4.0. And he said, Mom, I'd rather be at home. I said, I'd rather you get lower grades and interact with people. He ended up coming home. So I saw my kids all the time because I was here. But we have a program called Hugs from Home, and the parents pay for it. And it's actually a cool thing because the Women's Auxiliary puts it together, and any extra money earned is put to projects that help the students on campus. And they do get something from their parents that way 2 or 3 times a year. And they come and pick it up on their way to the cafeteria. It's cute. It's not very expensive. Some of the students never pick theirs up. So some care about that a lot more than others. But I think just knowing that, you're behind them, you support them, you're not expecting all A's. I did tell when my son lived at home, I said, hey, if you ever want me to read your reading assignment so you can type and take notes, I'll be glad to do it, because I loved hearing what they were learning about. And now and then he'd do that. If he was a little overwhelmed and he just needed, he'd say, okay, read this chapter. He would take the notes. That didn't happen that often. Some of my kids would send me papers and say, what do you think? And they wanted my advice. Some of mine, I never even saw a paper unless I came across it, on their desk sometime later. So all our students are different. We know that from homeschooling. Some are going to need more emotional support. Some are going to need more academic support. Right. They're probably all going to need financial support. So helping them plan and figure those things out, and, being there for them. And as a parent, if we help prepare them well for the process and the scholarships, that's going to make it much easier for all of us. So that's probably the best way we're going to prepare them, help them with their time and scheduling so that they do that well, so they know what's expected of them. That's probably the most support we're going to give while they're in high school. They probably are not going to need as much while they're in college. If you've done your job well and they're responding the way they're supposed to respond, then it should be easy from then on out. Of course, I say that.
And sometimes that means even when they call us for help, we kind of have to be like, well, this is something you really need to take care of. I know I had to do that sometimes. No, you need to make the call. I can't do that for you anymore. That's something you need to do. So sometimes
I actually loved that part with my daughters in particular, who did not like to make phone calls. When they turned 18, I loved being able to say, they're not going to talk to your mama. So
right?
you got to make that call. So,
Yes,
so.
very true. Very true. Well, we need to wrap it up. I see by my clock that we are at the end of our time. Again, it went very quickly for me. I hope it did for you. This has been wonderful. So much good information that I think will help people out there. And I just, again, want to thank you, Pat, for being here. There will be in the show notes just all sorts of relevant links about what Pat has been talking about, not the least of which to Bryan College, and also perhaps a way to get in touch with Pat herself if you're interested as homeschool students in hearing more about Bryan College. We can certainly make that available in the show notes. And again, Pat, just thanks so much. This time has been wonderful.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And it does seem to have just flown by. So thanks for the opportunity.
I'm glad. I'm glad. And everybody, thanks so much for being here. As usual, I have no idea what my next episode will be after these 3. So just show up next week and find out with me. Have a great day. Take care. Yeah,
if you had me talk about my 9 kids and their ages and their grandkids, we would be way, way, way longer.